right, the passport of Mallam Ilia is a love story that's tinged with vengeance and a little bit of a revenge. On his quest to avenge the death of his wife, Zara, the hero, Mallam Ilia, misses out on his entire youth. Magic Carpet Studios have spent the last 4 years trying to bring this story to life. Here's an update on the work so far.
When I was called upon to do this, because I've read the story, I know the story, I was really excited about the prospect of turning this into an adaptation.
Speaking of those features that make African stories unique, I'll take you to an example of a very popular African animation. One of the first few made in the continent, Kirikou and the Sorceress. It was a part of it in the storytelling that you could see how African stories are told. We don't embellish anything. There's no makeup to African stories. There's no cover-up. If things are this way, you always see it this way. It's just a form of authenticity that is in there.
But something struck me about Passport of Mallam Ilia, and that was the title for the book.
Passport of Mallam Ilia is something that captures culture, captures, the African essence, and capture that element of adventure that we all want to see in film. In terms of the story is written by a renowned author, Cyprian Quincy, written in 1960. And looking at that, nothing beats that. And taking that as an adaptation and bringing that into the form of animation just really makes for a beautiful film. And somehow, I feel like it's one of those pieces of literature that should have always been adapted, but somehow did not.
The Passport of Mallam Ilia is very unique because it's a 2D traditional, but it's also something that has the fusion of history, culture, artistry that is very peculiar and unique to the northern part of Nigeria. More interestingly, it's a travel log, so it's not just in Nigeria, it happened in Nigeria. There are clips from Cameroon and even all the way to Saudi Arabia. And through music and the best of artistry, we bring this magic, frame by frame, into the future.
So now, joining us on the show, the producer of the animated film Passport of Mallam Ilia, Ferdy Ladi Adimefe.
You did well.
Ferdy Ladi Adimefe.
Well.
Nice to meet you. Well done.
95 over 100.
Okay. Next time it'll be 100 over 100. Don't worry. And nice to meet you.
Sylvia Essessien. I'm legal rep for Magic Carpet Studios.
Nice to meet you, Sylvia.
Nice to meet you.
So we're just going to have a quick chat about your movie, your animated movie. I hardly ever see animated movies in Nigeria. So for me, this is actually a first. Correct me if I'm wrong. So can you give us more details on the process of making, what the movie is about, when it's coming out, all the details.
So, growing up, I was very fortunate to have watched a lot, from Prince of Egypt to Lion King.
Nice.
I still go back to some of these things. And I remember reading this book in secondary school. It was something that stood out for me. And so one day we sat in the office, we said, okay, guys, we're making advertising for brands, right? So how do we create a movie?
Okay.
And what book would likely make a great film? And so we started exploring different literature, and the Passport of Mallam Ilia kept coming up, and we went back to reread it. So reading it as an adult was very different, and I could see why it had to be made into a film. The cinematic appeal. Nice. It was a small book of about 90 pages, but it was really everything. And we were looking for a universal story that could travel. We didn't just want to make a movie for Nigerians or for Africans. We wanted to make a movie for the world, but from an African perspective.
Nice.
And I think it had everything. It had the love story, it had the fighting scenes, the action, the adventure, the thriller. And so we went to look for the family. And the publishing company, it took us about a whole year to find and then close up on that. We did a 40-minute documentary that is on YouTube. Okay. So we went to Kano for about 8 weeks. We stayed in Kano. We went to meet the emir. We're just looking at the book and trying to correspond. And that was the process, because I think when you want to make a film, it's story first. Right. We wanted to get the story right. We felt that we needed to allow the story come to full potential. And after that, you start to do your fundraising. The challenge in Nigeria, again, is that when it comes to the creative industry, the capital there is not always one that can allow for you to sort of like scale in the way that it is. I mean, IPs in Nigeria are not considered bankable. So if you want to really produce a film, you have to collateralize that. And for a young studio at the time, we didn't have the resources. So we had to go on WeFunder. Right, and we've been on it for about 4 years. Zara played the role of Dija played Zara.
Oh, nice.
And Sadiq Daba was actually the lead vocal director, but he was alive at the
legendary.
time. The legendary guy. So I remember
That's
those were his
amazing.
last dates. So after the recording, a few months after he passed, but we were so thrilled because he sat with us in the studio. He told us history of his days as a broadcaster, moving into film. Right? We think this movie is fantastic because one, the time of African storytelling has come.
Okay.
We're seeing that the Western companies like Disney, HBO are already buying our IPs.
Oh, nice.
They're already recognizing that the stories have to come from here.
Okay.
If you pay attention a lot to Disney, what you're finding in most cases is repackaging of the same story. So there was Mulan, and there was Mulan 25 years after. And not much change. There was Lion King, and there was Lion King 23 or 24
Let's not
years
talk about
after.
the Little Mermaid.
There's been
Yes,
10
the Little
Lion
Mermaid.
Kings.
Yes, so, and then oftentimes, if you look at even whether it's from the other companies, they might take it back in time, but we're sitting on treasure troves. Like, if you look at our fairy tales, our folk tales, there was just so many epic feature series that could come out of that. And I think for us as a studio, we owe it to Africans to become one of the studios to bring those stories to life.
Yeah.
To help the world discover us the way we want to be seen.
Nice.
Our royalty, our history, our ancient empires, the emperors and their magic. To also talk about our legends, the literature that they contain, to just really explore the beauty of African storytelling. And I think it's not just a hobby, it's an economy. For an animated film like this, you could have like 1,000 people working on it.
Okay.
Disney released the Waju, right? And over 2,000 people worked on it. But a lot of it
that's
were
a
not
lot.
actually like a Nigerian studio. Because 5 years ago when they were looking for studios, we were not that much. We were just starting out. So right now we're big. We could have taken on that job and deliver it better than anything else, right? So the fun for us is this also has music, right? Because we're going to be having, there is an album attached to this that is going to be like an EP. And then
lovely.
what we're also trying to do with this is to release it globally. So and animation is very interesting because you have about 12 million people working in the industry. So here's what happens when a movie comes out. If I'm in animation, I would watch it.
Okay.
But I'm not always watching for entertainment, yet I'll get entertained.
Okay.
But as a studio owner, I'm watching for reference, like, what's this guy's doing? Man, this is mad. Like, Jesus, guys, these guys, they're killing us. Right? So there is the whole emotion of watching. Sometimes I'm watching, like, have you seen that? We talk about it over and over again. So when you watch an animated movie, you're watching for two reasons: entertainment, learning. So if that 12.5 million people who work in the industry, an average animation movie, about 5.5 million tickets.
Okay.
And that's from basic animation film. So most animation film has hardly ever made a loss. Right?
nice.
And most people don't know that.
It's a surefire bet.
It is a surefire bet. But live action, if I'm doing a live action film, which is a regular Nollywood, I mean, I will do well in Nigeria and maybe UK.
Okay.
But once you get to travel, you find that there's a cultural bias, and you might not travel. Animation escapes all of those things. So in terms of the potential for revenue is insane.
Okay.
Right? So, you know, if you do 5.5 million tickets, in Europe and in the US, an average ticket is $9. Right? So you just get an idea. Only 2 films have been produced from Africa and exported through cinema that was done by South Africans. It's Adventures of Zambezia and Kumba. Both
and these are animated?
Yes. But they were 3D, not 2D.
Okay.
And they both grossed about...
So is this 2D?
Yes, this is 2D.
Oh, nice.
And the beauty of 2D is almost a premium art. It's rare.
Okay.
In maybe 1,000 films, you might just find 1 or 2 2D. So there is a sense that the industry, apart from anime that is really coming now, but when it comes from the West, you know, 2D is something that they really, really respect.
Okay.
And all that. But it's a fusion of 2D and 3D. Right, but the interesting aspect of the entire project is that the South Africans grossed about $76 million on both films, but their cost of production was higher. Right. So in Nigeria, you have an advantage because we literally train people. So we are looking for people who love to learn. They keep coming. And for us, we really want to create a middle class for storytellers, people that can actually enjoy what they create and create from love, create from the beauty of from freedom. Not like you're creating just to
Well, let me jump in here. First of all, you guys have Beyoncé'd this. You know, when you release a project and then you release the soundtrack to the project and then you have a rollout, I think that's really cool. You have to let us know when all of that is transpiring. And I don't know about what secondary school or primary school you went to, but I do remember that Passport of Mallam Ilia book along with the Jaja of Popo. I didn't read it, but I remember seeing it.
He was like, did I read it? I was like, I can't remember.
It was actually even used across West Africa. It was part of the African Writers Series.
It was part of our curriculum. I don't know if I ever got to it. I do know that it had to be bought. But it's very good that we're telling our stories because representation counts. And it's not very often that you see black people turned into cartoons. It's even rare to see black people of Nigerian descent turned into cartoons. So that's super cool. And I think you guys are doing an amazing job. I can't wait to see more you're producing. But I got a question. When you're creating these characters, and they're being drawn out, because obviously it's a lot of illustration that goes into making these.
That's true.
Can I get a little bit of where your mindset comes from? Do you have any input as to what the characters look like, how they're represented, etc.? Because I have some concerns there.
Okay, we actually do a lot of research. So we went to the north. This was actually set in 19th century Kano. And 19th century Kano was very, very, the Tuareg culture. You have the Hausa and the Fulani. There's a way, there's their morphology, their facial structure. Most of them really have long nose, right? In those places. So you have to really pattern it. And at the time, so we use a lot of references from, we looked at the history and we looked at the dressing. At the time, Kano was a world power in its own right, and they had this tie and dye culture. It was a textile hub, right? And they were making lots of tie and dye, which is clothes, and we had to capture that, right? So a lot of the research is where we come from, right? And trying to sort of like interpret the characters in a way that is authentic to who we are, right? And respect the features, the facial structures of the black people and the beauty that is revealed in that. So we really, really honor that. I think that's one of the most exciting part of this, right? What you're actually seeing was done about 4 years ago when we're still experimenting. What we have is radically different.
Because I do want to remind you that, because representation counts. And, it's little kids that often watch this. And I know as a little girl, we weren't at the place where we had black Barbies. Not just yet. I'm not trying to reveal my age or anything. But then when they came out, it was like, oh my gosh, look, she's so cool. She's black just like me. And you'd want to have kids also keep that in their mind. Like, okay, this isn't like a regular Little Mermaid. This one isn't an Oyinbo character, or this one is a Nigerian. But she doesn't really look like me. So I think it's important to keep those in mind, and I think you guys...
So our head of writing is from the north, Isaac, and we had to go for him because we wanted him to keep us close to the culture. Right. But in creating an IP, which is called intellectual property, I mean, that's how...
Legally speaking, yes, darling, yes, you're over here.
We need to know more. We need to know more
Tell us about the legal side of this.
So tell us more about the IP, the intellectual property, how to protect it, since you have a law background, obviously.
Obviously, the Passport of Mallam Ilia is a very beautiful project. And I think it's one of the projects that we need to draw more attention to. And I love that we're having this interview right now because Nigerians need to be more aware of the importance of IP. So intellectual property is obviously intangible property. And there is this, I want to say, history in our culture where we draw attention to only things we can see, touch, cars, houses, we put value on such things. And not so much value is placed on things we can't see. And so the world is evolving. We need to catch up. So we need to pay more attention to intangible assets such as films, and in this case, animation. So Nigeria or the government needs to be more involved with protecting IP, and even creatives, for example, they need to be more aware of their rights when it comes to IP. It's not something a lot of people are talking about.
So how? As a creative myself, I would like to know because I bring out content and then you don't want people like copying your content, stealing your content, making it their own. How do you protect that kind of IP?
For creatives like yourself, so the major protective gear there is copyright. So for copyright, thankfully, you don't have to register it. As soon as you put out content, it's protected by copyright. But some people go the extra mile to register copyright just to have maybe the papers and say, okay, I have this registered, but you don't have to register copyright. So the book by Cyprian Ekwensi, Passport of Mallam Ilia, for example, did not need to be registered as an intellectual property, but to go the extra mile, it was registered. Now, the animation of the book or the animated feature film of the book is a derivative work from, the copyrighted novel. So in that case, we don't even have to register it. What we have to do is get approval from the family or Cyprian, late Cyprian unfortunately, we had to get the approval from the family, which Freddie mentioned.
Nice.
And those are all ways of protecting IP. It's just formalizing everything. So, yeah, you don't have to register.
Okay.
You just have to be more, I want to say assertive. Like, if you put out something on Instagram, it's yours.
Right.
Someone copies it.
Right.
You can be like, I have the copyright to this. It's mine. It's my idea.
And like, if you have any questions out there as an artist or a creative, call her. You know, get you a lawyer who knows how to deal with these things, because you obviously don't want to be handling it all
especially
yourself.
Especially for creatives, people don't take advantage of the fact that, you know, you need a lawyer. You definitely need a lawyer to protect all your property, no matter how small it is, no matter 30 seconds, 1 minute, you need a lawyer.
A lot of creatives can be very, very impatient. They just don't want to look at the fine lines. And people are getting super smart. So whether you're dealing with investors, you're dealing with distributors, whatever you're doing, read the lines and see what is there and let the lawyers advise. I think someone told me 2 things that would help you as a creative businessman is the strength of your lawyer's knowledge and the best in advising your business model. And I think I think that we've learned a great deal. But when it comes to IP, there is a challenge in Nigeria where IPs are not necessarily recognized as collateral. So, you know, in a sense, you cannot unlock capital. In most developed countries, if you have an IP that is registered, you can take it and they will give you developmental funds. So I think 3 areas that we think the government can step in is to refine our laws. So at least even if you cannot fully cover the cost of your production, it should be able to meet 20% of the value of the production as the value of the IP. And I think it allows for them to unlock capital on that. The second thing is taxes. I think a lot of developed countries where animation is really, really like an industrial scale, they create taxes where if you produce in the country, you get 35%, 30%, 25% tax rebate. So it's very attractive. The government is using that to attract foreign direct investment. There's a third thing, which is co-production treaties, that we need to have co-production arrangements with developed countries. One, you alone as a country, animation is expensive. If you produce only from your studio in a country, it's going to be hard. But co-producing gives you access to other capital, larger markets. So these are conversations that we are championing as a studio because we don't believe we're making a film alone. We're building an industry.
Listen, we got to have you back on the business show to break this down completely. Rodas needs to hear about this.
This is very good. Thank you. Brilliant, brilliant information. And we're looking forward to the movie coming out soon.
You guys will get tickets.
Oh, definitely. We can't wait. We can't wait.
I'll catch you, of course. Because
thank you so much, Sylvia, for coming on the show. Thank you very much, Laddie. Thank you very much.